Welcome to Let's Talk Men's Mental Health with Dr. Rogers, Leslie Rogers, Wayne Lassane, and Dr. Lowell Whiteman,
Yes.
who is our two-time guest, right? So this is like great. Um, right. We are on here every Monday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tonight we're going to talk about depression, men's mental health as it relates to depression. And one thing I wanted to talk about tonight was the senator's disclosure around depression. Senator John Fetterman, who's in the news in the media right now, around his own disclosure with personal experiences of depression. And first of all, I want to say, give praises to him for coming forward with that. It doesn't matter why he came forward and he's talking about it. And I think that when we see, especially people, public figures, disclose experiences with mental health, I think it kind of normalizes disclosures and it validates experiences of other men. So thank you, sir, for coming forward with that. And I hope that more come forward and talk about their mental health struggles, because I think it's needed in
Yeah,
order to
I
validate
definitely agree. Like
experiences. What do you guys think?
again, the more people speak up about it, the easier it makes for other people to follow behind. Again, we need great models, right? People to model for us and let us know that it's okay. Basically, it's almost like giving us permission to step forward, right? It's like, and sometimes we need permission, so yeah.
And and I would add to that,
Right.
Mark. First, I agree with you, and I would add to that Fetterman has heightened the bar for disclosure, because he didn't just disclose. This is not the first time he's come forward and openly admitted, I've got a mental health issue. Yeah,
Oh, I
this is
didn't
not the
know
first
that.
time.
Really?
So the all of the major publications, CNN reported this way, New York Times, heck, even Vanity Fair, for crying out loud, getting a style on being depressed, coming out of Vanity Fair. But my point is that he is bringing attention to it in a very personal, genuine way. He's being transparent about it. He's not woe is me. I know where to go to get help. I'm going to go there and I'm going to get myself taken care of. And he's already said that within a few days he's going to be back on the job, because he's got a strategy. He knows what it takes for him to get his mental wellness components in play to keep him away from illness.
Yeah. I didn't even know he had checked himself into the hospital. And, that's a major deal, because a lot of men are guarded around that word hospitalization, right? And I think it takes a lot of
Yeah,
vulnerability to come
yeah.
forward and
It can be scary.
disclose
I had a
that.
client that was just afraid of, and I think that people have a misconception about medication, and it's scary, the thought of to be medicated or to be on medication. I think, because I talked to a couple of people about it, that's what that comes up, and it's like, oh man, what is it going to do to me? How am I going to be? Am I not going to be able to do these things? And so I think that that's a huge thing, that if we can just like take the myth out of medication, so it's not so scary to people, that's because that's a big one.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go over a couple stats really quickly, and then we'll, get into discussion, because I know, Lo, you have to jump off. So these are stats in the U.S. by Department of Health and Human Services. Nearly 9% of U.S. men reported daily feelings of anxiety or depression. And of course, there's a cultural difference with that, right? About 4 in 10 men with daily feelings of anxiety or depression took medication, right? And again, that's in the U.S. And I also pulled stats of outside the country, because I want to show that not only does men in the U.S. struggle with mental illness and depression, anxiety, but people around the world struggle, right? Is not only excluded to U.S. persons. So a survey was taken of 1,000 men in the UK, and this is what they found. 77% of men polled have suffered with common mental health symptoms like anxiety, stress, or depression. 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about mental health. 29% of those who haven't done so say they are too embarrassed to speak up about it. And this is in UK, right? The biggest cause of mental health issues in men's lives are work, their finances, and their health, which is similar to the men here in the US. 40% of men polled said that it would take thoughts of suicide or self-harm to even compel them to seek engagement in therapy. And lastly, when men do choose to speak up, the results show that 66% would share their feelings only with their partners above anyone else. And then the last stats I wanted to show was, which, you know, this makes sense. The suicide rate among American men, this is back to US men, is about four times higher than among women, according to data from Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Women are more likely to attempt to suicide, but men are more likely to succeed.
And the method,
right?
the method of
and that's
attempting
because you guys
suicide.
know why that is.
You know, men
Why
tend to use firearms. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, women tend to use less lethal means. Men tend to use more lethal means. And here's a cultural difference in suicide rates. White men age 85 and older have the highest suicide rate of any demographic group in the United States, 4 times larger than the population as a whole. 51 out of every 100,000 white males older than 85 commit suicide each year, more than any other group by age, sex, and race, according to a 2012 stats from Centers of Disease Control. So these statistics are a bit dated, but the numbers are still similar, right? They haven't changed that much, right? So I wanted to bring stats from like a cultural perspective and an international perspective, because again, U.S. men in the U.S. aren't exclusively impacted by mental health or mental illnesses. It's nationwide, right? It's just about how they deal with it, how they cope, and how they deal with it. And in some countries, you can't even talk about it.
You're getting into the areas of my wheelhouse with athletes, and I'm gonna make sure that I don't just do gender specific masculine wise, because it's the masculine energy isn't unique to men versus women. It's more prevalent in men, obviously, because of the chemistry. But masculine behavioral energy will many times get into the mindset of a competitive individual, like what I deal with, and camouflage and detour them from asking for support during their time of need and being mentally well. So when they don't get the support, they go to the illness because they don't take care of it. You know, and there are obvious, you know, signs for what the depression looks like. And so I want to make sure that people understand that when you use the word clinical, that means something different than therapeutic, or just I'm upset today, I'm feeling kind of blue. You know, it's not a routine kind of occurrence. So there's the major depressive disorder. That's the nomenclature for clinical. You're in the illness zone, and you may have a predisposed predilection towards that versus someone who just has a bad day and just gets a little blue.
Well, for a diagnosis, it has to significantly impact your day-to-day function.
Away from what is, I hate to use the word normal, but it's the patterns that you demonstrated that indicate you deliver a consistent level of performance. Now that's my wheelhouse. That's athletes. So I walk through locker rooms and I look for athletes that are in a secluded place, like in the corner of a locker room, because that's like a snuggle. They're on that's like on the spectrum, and they're getting into a place where they can kind of snuggle, and they're listening to their music. That's a false negative, because their teammates will look at that and say he's okay, listening to his music, or he or she are listening to music. I make it a point to go over and say, hey, what are you listening to? Hey, can you share it with me? If they don't give me eye contact and let me participate with them, or at least an exchange of conversation, I know we've got a possible problem here. A person who's slipping out of the wellness zone
Yeah.
and moving closer and closer to illness. I've had professional
Yeah.
football players that I've discovered they're cutting themselves and have been doing it for years because they're depressed because somebody with a masculine identity pushed them into football and said, you need to play football. And you're a big guy. You know, you can play football. Oh, you came from that neighborhood. You should be playing basketball. There's a lot of forces we put on young people to put them into conditions that they have a hard time managing. So confidence building is a huge way to create enabling behaviors for people to have coping mechanisms when they feel blue and they get down. Here's an example I'll end with. On the playground of an elementary school, when the teachers are standing out on the sidewalk watching the kids, many of them are taking that time to be one with their colleagues. Yeah, they're watching the kids and they have their whistle and it's a nice day, but are you really watching your kid? Because when I go out there as an administrator and I see kids lined up against the wall that's way to the left or to the right of the main thrust of the kids, I go talk to those kids. That's a problematic vision for me. When I talk to them, I give them strategies on how to get engaged, how to talk to their friends. We're taking steps toward combating, deterring a major depression disorder possibility. But we don't do that. We don't do that. So it's not surprising to me that we're having more and more awareness to anxiety, depression at the clinical
maybe I'm
level.
ignorant because I don't know, so I'm asking a question. Do they have like in school systems? Do they have people who actually look for those things? Or do they even understand and know how to?
No one is ever ignorant when they ask questions, so I'm going to take that away.
My experience has not been, I had some national exposure to a lot of school districts all over the country, and I was in the district as a consultant and an employee. Yes, they have people that are school psychologists, you know, for the IEPs, but it's more the cognitive issues about helping the kids study better, pay attention. So it's a yes, no. Yes, they do have people, but no, they don't know what to look for or how to ask.
Because it made me think about like students in high schools. Like if there was somebody actually walking around school to look for those behaviors, there could be a lot of things prevented possibly. You know, a lot of help could be, a lot of great work could be done in those spaces like that. You know.
Yeah. So that's why prevalence rates, when you talk about prevalence rates of all cases of like depression, anxiety, et cetera, you know, they're a bit skewed or because there's a lot of underreporting because you don't get a lot of, nothing is like out of 100 cases, right? Because people don't report or they underreport or you don't know what to look for. Even when you talk about in clinical settings, you know, a lot of men are misdiagnosed because they don't present as women. Like women will come in and disclose like exactly what they feel, right? When you're talking about depression and anxiety, but men may come in with external symptoms such as anger disturbances or violence or something like that, and then you totally miss depression, right? Unless you know the type of questions to ask for. So then if you're talking about doing research and stuff like that, and you're collecting all of this data on men and depression, something might go miss, and then the numbers are not as accurate as they should be. So if you say like 10 men are depressed and then only 4 came forward, right? It could be a matter of underreporting.
You brought up a great word that is anger. You brought up anger. So in the sports world, when coaches and teammates see an amazing play and then outside gestures of pounding their fists and, you know, yelling and that kind of stuff, that's commended. they're exalted in how aggressive they were on the field. But that also could be a sign if they continue that behavior in the locker room, at practice towards teammates. That's anger coming out. That's aggressive, physical, exemplifying anger. We need to ask more questions. Coaches need to be empowered on how to investigate that and make sure that that player still hits hard, still makes the play, but is not slipping into that illness zone. That their wellness, their mental wellness is constantly being watched and constantly being fed with strategies on how to cope with it and manage it effectively.
But you have to teach them how to teach men in general, and
Yep.
men, males, boys, what have you, how to communicate what they're feeling. And I think that, you know, sometimes it's a challenge to come up with words to express what you're feeling. So then
Well,
that
first off, I want to say,
manifests
because this is
in
kind of off topic
anger.
for me, like in the
What do
sense
you
of
think, Wayne?
it's so much now. I'm seeing such a bigger picture, right? I'm seeing like, man, like because the good thing is that we have more awareness for mental health, right? But now you just when you start to really look into it, you're like, oh wow, like every sporting team needs a specialist on the team to go around and talk to all the players individually, one-on-one. Police departments, you know, not just, you know, they need to go in and talk to these people one-on-one, you know, because again, we don't know how if we've never been taught, right, how to process feelings and emotions, right? But if somebody can come and help you navigate these feelings and help you on your journey to help you figure it out and be curious and ask you questions, now you can start to help people unpack some of the things that they've been dealing with for a long time that they've been afraid to, like, well, because most of us walk around with our guard up anyways in a very defensive way, right? And so now you have somebody who specializes and actually is really good and knows what they're doing, can go in and now start to break down in these individuals who dealing with who have a lot of pressure built up. And that just, it sounds to me like, I mean, when I think about it, it's like, wow, that's so needed. That would be amazing. That can help so many people.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, it's not like some of these disciplines and some of in these areas, these environments, you do have people to talk to them. In police departments, they have mental health professionals to talk one-on-one. But again, you know, if you have the male come in there, it's teaching them while they're in that position of speaking one-on-one onto how to communicate. Let me tell you, I will pull out an emotions wheel in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And you might think it's silly or might think it's childish, but it's not, because a lot of adults don't know how to express what they're feeling. They don't know how to say, I'm angry, or if they say I'm angry, then they don't know how to process what they're angry about. So what happens when you can't even process what you're angry about because this person disrespected me, that's why I'm angry, or because this event took place, that's why I'm angry. You know, being able to communicate that to other people so that they can understand why you're angry. Because sometimes, and not just men, sometimes we get angry and we assume that the other person knows why we're angry, but they have no idea, right? And then that makes us even more angry. So it's like being able to create this understanding, like through education, as to how to communicate what
And I
you're
just want to
feeling
correct. So
effectively
yeah,
to other
and I know
people so
there's
they can
people at the police.
understand
I know
as
there's
well,
mental health
right?
people in the police department. I was just speaking more. Yeah.
No, that's not what I meant. I just meant in general, like, you know, even when you're in environments like whether it's police departments, whether it's in sports places or other environments, you know, sometimes they have specialists there to talk one-on-one, but the person just doesn't know how to communicate what they're feeling. And it doesn't take, you know, it takes time to do that because you have to get through rapport building first. You got to build rapport because of trust issues. You got to get through so much
And I agree.
stuff
I was more
before
so
you
to what the
even
brother
get
was
to the
saying that,
meat
you know,
of what's
I would
really
love
going on.
the idea of somebody walking around and being really personable with the people,
Yeah.
opposed to having them come to them, just walking around, just being friendly, like you said, building that rapport. Like, hey, how you doing today, Steve? Hey, Michael, how's your day going? And you start to, and then being an expert, you notice those things and see within. Oh, you know what? Let me go talk to Tom today. He looks like he might be going through something. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, and Wayne,
Yeah.
that type of behavior should grow. When you exemplify that behavior and that interest, others may do it too, because there's also a hesitation by others to have the conversation. Like Leslie was saying with rapport, I don't want to do it because I don't know them that well. Yeah, they're in my department, but I'm not sure they want me to talk to them about it. But when you start having the culture demonstrate that interaction, you then support them in identifying. And if you supplement that with things on the bulletin board, you know, by the water cooler, with different things to watch out for, you know, moodiness, quick anger from somebody who doesn't do that very often, You can ask deeper questions, but now the culture is allowing those questions to happen, and everybody understands it.
Yes.
That's wellness
Yes.
versus illness. And I think if we become more proactive in the mental wellness arena, we're going to be able to leverage a John Fetterman issues and use that as examples, and challenge his colleagues, his fellow senators who said, hey, I really commend him for doing that. Well, great. If you did, then be more mindful of your colleagues when they're sitting around the water cooler and help, be a friend, be a true colleague so that you're helping them with their mental wellness.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think it teaches people to be mindful, because we don't know what the person sitting next to us is going through, right? Let me tell you, every one of us, and I believe this, some people may say, not me, but I think every one of us can potentially wear masks, walking around. We're in certain positions where we wear masks and we're afraid to take those masks off because of backlash or what may happen. So, I praise we're talking about men's mental health right now. Men specifically, I praise men when they come forward, because just like Senator John Fetterman came forward, he may open the door, like you said, for others to come forward as well. Well, it's just like in the sports arena when the two athletes came forward, right? Naomi and Simone Biles came forward, right? Then it opened the door for other people to come forward and talk about it, because it's like people sit back and wait for validation, right? To see how they look and see how they're going to be treated. Right? Then that determines whether or not they're going to come forward. So what you do is when you come forward and talk about your mental health experiences, even if you receive negative feedback, people are watching how you respond to that. And if you continue to be able to love yourself and praise yourself, and continue to go forward and walk in your path as to who you are and being transparent and things, then people will be able to build coping around negative feedback as well, because we all are going to receive negative feedback, right? I used to work Cafe Con Crema. Oh, that's nice. I used to work in corporate and could never just be myself, as I was the only African American in the group. Yeah, let me tell you, I was law enforcement for 25 years, and 10 plus of those years I was doing investigations, and I was on the squads as not only the only African American female, but the only female on squads, right? So sometimes that can be a bit challenging in how you deal with different types of environments, and it can impact your mental health, how you look at yourself, self-esteem, self-confidence, right? A lot of those things. You guys want to say anything about that? I know, Laura, you're about to jump off.
Time with you guys with this. Environments are huge for me as a source of triggers. Leslie, you and I talked about cognitive triggers, which are different than just the mental health use of the word trigger, because that includes environment. Like this lady in her comments, she was in an environment where she was the only person of color in this. Well, that's the environment. That automatically puts a lack of confidence in her. She's wondering who's going to support me.
Yep.
I'm going a little extreme, but all those feelings could be rushing through her mind, right? In addition to the ethnic inferences that are also there that could undermine her confidence. So whether it's athletes, police departments, corporate America, or even at your own home with your kids, when you see them flinching at different things, that colors, shape, be mindful of what's in the environment, and then give them solutions and coping strategies on how to deal with those changes. A quick story about Alabama's football stadium. They have 4 jumbotrons in that stadium. Can you imagine, as a visiting squad, coming into that stadium with all 4 of those jumbotrons on, with all of the history of Alabama's success blasting at you, along with the student body has already come into the arena 2 hours before game. Alabama changed their policies and let the kids in the stadium. So they're yelling at players, the competitors, while they're practicing and warming up. Now, that's an environmental change that cause a little bit of stress, anxiety, and potentially depression. So the environment for me is a huge, huge thing to be aware of, be mindful of, and adjust it as you can, as much the control you might have it, because it will help save your day. Have a great time, you guys. Love being with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much, guys. This is Dr. Lowell Whiteman,
Yes, thank you so
360
much.
Mindset,
Yeah, we
NFL
really
Performance
appreciate
Coach.
it.
Thank you so much for joining us for the second week. Yeah. So, guys, we're just talking about Senator John Fetterman's disclosure around depression and how, first of all, we praised him for coming forward because it normalizes feelings of depression within a male population. It validates those experiences as well, right? And hopefully it reduces some of those anxieties around coming forward with depression as well, so that people can get the help that they need, because there's nothing wrong with feeling low, right? Like Dr. Whiteman said before he left earlier, he was saying that it's okay. You know, people struggle with depression, depressed mood. And when you talk about clinical depression, now it's significantly interfering with your day-to-day living, your job, your performance, academics, etc. You know, that's what clinical depression is, especially when you get into diagnoses and things of that sort. So, you know, I praise Senator Fetterman for coming forward and talking about and being brave and courageous, using these big words to normalize the emotions and experiences that men go through. I praise you for coming forward and talking about your mental health challenges. Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges I find, though, and then I said this earlier, and I think this is important to say again, is the communication piece. I think like the challenge is for men to communicate what they're feeling in fear of how they're going to be received, right? And the fear of how they're going to be received or how they're going to be looked at. And you know, the piece that I read earlier about a fear of feeling embarrassed or ostracized or you know, some type of negative feedback. So then how do you communicate what you're feeling? And then on the other, so let's put it on an extreme. Fear of communicating what you're feeling, and then on the other extreme, not knowing how to communicate what you're feeling. So those both can end in like irritability, anger, frustration, right? Not being able to tell someone, this is what I'm feeling in this time. You know, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling depressed, you know. So being able to, you know, reflect on what you're feeling enough to talk about it. And again, guys, I bring up that emotions wheel. You can Google the emotions wheel and hundreds of emotions pop up, and it's good for your children too. Look at those emotions and be able to reflect on what you're feeling so that you can communicate what you're feeling to your partner, your loved ones, or at work or wherever, where have you. And what that does, it creates insight within yourself about how you're feeling, about what you're going through. Because a lot of times you become angry, you're like, where did that come from? What am I angry for? Right? But then if you have, you know, ways to kind of understand what you're feeling, then you can communicate that. And I think that, let me tell you, that improves relationships. It improves workmanship, you know, what you're doing on a job. It improves sleep because it potentially decreases stress and anxiety. If you can communicate, communication is big, guys. If you can communicate what you're feeling, it reduces a lot of stuff. I mean, it improves your overall mood, right? That you can communicate. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing when you communicate things. So it's called the emotions wheel. It's either emotions wheel or list of emotions.
To your question about, like, you know, how do you communicate those things? And you know, first of all, and I as a man, you know, I would say that, you know, it's kind of scary because you don't know if somebody's gonna weaponize those things against you, right? Right. But we have to. It takes a lot of courage. It does. It's there.
So let me ask you this real quick. What do you think is the scariest thing from a man's perspective. And if anyone out there wants to answer this question, you guys can too, because it will be helpful for other people to read this. What's the scariest thing about disclosing that you've experienced a mental health crisis or you've experienced a mental illness? What's the
I would say
scariest thing
viewed
about that? Like
it's because it's viewed
potentially
as a weakness,
disclosing.
and everyone wants to be viewed as weak, right? Because you get bullied as a kid, and or whatever you happened at your home, and you couldn't defend yourself. Sometime in life when you couldn't defend yourself, right? It doesn't feel good when you couldn't stand up for yourself, and you couldn't whatever that may be, right? So you want it's the sign of weakness that you don't want to show anybody. You don't want anybody to see that you're vulnerable, that you're not strong enough, or they could take advantage of you, and that is scary. And so I just had this conversation recently this week actually. I was talking about that, like who to talk to, right? And that's when it becomes a little tricky, because you want to make sure you're talking to somebody who that can show up for you and take care of your emotions, right? Because they've created this, because you created this rapport, this bond or whatever, so now you can be vulnerable with this person, and go to them, and then hopefully either they're able to talk to you about things, because saying things out loud is an amazing feeling, because it's like you take weights off your shoulders, that you're letting all this energy that you have built up inside you, like anxiety and everything. When you say it out loud, you get to release that into the world, into the universe, right? And it feels so much better to just be able to speak it out loud. Sometimes that's enough. Just to speak it out loud is enough to be helpful. And then other times you never know what this person may be able to give you the information to get you to help, or to push you into another direction, or get your resources, whatever. But just speaking it is the first step, right? Speak it out loud. And I know that it can be scary. And so you want to try to, make sure that the person that you're talking to is just the person that you,
Yeah.
and then if you don't have anybody to talk to, because I know that some people don't have people to talk to, they have, and as we know, they have amazing hotlines out here, that there are some amazing people working who they are here to help. They love helping. They want to help people. That's what they're there for. They want you to reach out. They want you to talk to them. They want to show up for you. And so again, just again, resources,
Yeah. So, okay, so you said that the fear, of feeling weak, people looking at you as being weak. So when you
Yeah.
talk about judgment of others, what about self-judgment? I mean, do you think that's judging yourself? Because oftentimes I feel that our biggest judger is ourselves, right? And sometimes we're thinking negative about ourselves.
Yes.
We think other people are thinking one way about us, and it's actually us that's thinking. It's other people don't. It doesn't even cross their minds, right? It's really what we think about ourselves. I mean, we think that if we come forward with a mental health crisis or a mental illness disclosure, then this is how it makes us feel. It doesn't make us feel too good, right? We feel like uncomfortable and icky and all those bad negative feelings, right? And it's not the other person, but it's
Yeah.
easier to say,
I see one of the listeners said
what
the
are they going
scariest
to
thing
think about me
is
if I
how the
come
information
forward?
will be used against you. Go again, yeah, weaponized. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
scary. Yeah, I completely agree. Especially and we get these messages at a very young age, right? When we say something and somebody responds a certain way, and then we see that response was a negative response, it's going to be highly unlikely that we go back to that person or say that thing again, because we don't want that negative response. And I think, oh man, I just had it. It was something you had said. It'll come back to me, but yeah, I definitely think that we got, and that's I always say, man. I try to be careful how I respond to people, because I know that I can set a tone and make them afraid now, or feel differently to come talk to me, especially having kids. Like I had to learn that again. It's a skill set that you have to learn. Like okay, let me not respond in a negative way, because I want this person to be able to come to me and talk to me freely without feeling like they can't, like I'm not going to be here for them. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so the scariest thing is for you, and I'm sure that
Yeah.
validates many men, how that information is going to be used. And not only how it's going to be used, let me tell you, as a psychologist and a provider, I understand that a lot of times men come into the mental health
Yeah,
space
yeah.
being
And to your,
judged
and I remember my
before they
point now. It
even
was about
come
how
in,
we
right?
judge ourselves. Yeah, we're our hardest critic easily. Like, and a lot of times, like you said, the other person's they're not even thinking about us, but we make it hard for ourselves. We take that on. We like, oh man, we start to speak to ourselves in a negative way. You know, like, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I'm weak, or I'm not good enough, or and all the other negative things that we throw at ourselves. You know, more so than anybody else could ever do it, because we're in our heads more. And it's again just like starting to recognize, and this is the hard part, right? Starting to recognize how much we really are worth, what our worth really is, and how good we really are. But that takes work, you know, and hence what we're speaking about now. Like we have to go get that help so we can start doing that work to change that narrative that we created around about ourselves.
Uh, yeah. So changing that negative self-talk into positive self-talk. So negative self-talk is more salient. That's why it's more easy. It's more easier to think about the negative aspects of our lives than it is the positive aspects of our lives, right? But you can cancel that out
Yes,
by using more positive
yes,
affirmations in your life, such as I am lovable. Using I am
yeah,
words, right? I am.
yes.
I am lovable. I am
I'm
courageous. I
amazing.
am
Yeah,
strong.
yeah,
I
yes,
am
yeah. I'm
amazing.
I'm
What else?
I'm a good person because a lot of times we don't think we're good
There's
people.
so
You know, I'm a
many
good person. You
affirmations
know,
out there
like
that you can use. And
I,
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's so many positive affirmations out there that you can
yes,
use, and you can use and pass it down to your children, pass it down to have them growing up. Um, you know, using positive affirmations to describe themselves as well, right?
oh
One, a
yes,
big one is
yes,
I am
yes.
lovable because we
I've
oftentimes
asked
don't love
people,
ourselves, right? I
do
am
you feel like you're
lovable.
lovable?
Yeah.
You
Mm,
know, and a lot of times they kind of like stop and think about it, like man,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, I don't know, I don't know,
Feel
yeah,
like, do I? Right. So, and that goes into
yes,
self-care, right? Self-care. Men can engage in self-care as well. Not only women. You know, you guys go to the
yes,
gym. You don't
yes,
say it's
yes,
self-care, but it does because you go to blow off steam, right? You just don't use that word care. So thinking about ways to engage in self-care is like a positive strategy too toward
mm.
increasing mood and decreasing symptoms, self-care such
Cause
as the gym. But what
I,
are other
yeah,
forms of
I think
self-care
men could,
outside of the gym?
because
Because there's
like
other
the
things
doctor said,
men can
we all
do.
have
Um,
masculine and feminine
so,
energy, right? And I think that men can go pay for services to go get a massage,
yeah,
self-care, to go get a pedicure or manicure. You know, again, these things, it feels good for somebody to take care of you and to do things for you. You know, you pay for a service to you know, and there's so many other things, right? You know, take yourself out to go to lunch, you know, or you know,
absolutely.
like figure out things that you enjoy doing and just do for yourself. You know, you don't have to always do something with somebody, right? Not saying it doesn't feel good. You know, another thing I found to be, I love this, is like, hey, you know, you can call a friend, like, hey, I'm about to go to lunch. Would you like to go with me? Because I'm going to go eat. You know, I'd love for you to come with me, you know, and maybe that person you want to have a conversation with, somebody you haven't, you know, you just enjoy their time and spending, you know, time with them. So many different things, right? Going for a drive in your car, listen to music, you know, that makes because music makes you feel good, right? Depending on what you listen to, can make
Yeah,
you can boost your vibration, right? Boost your frequency. You know, have the windows down if it's nice outside, and just or going outside, just getting outside and getting some good vitamin D. Vitamin D is known to make you feel better, and a lot of
yeah.
us are in the house, so get outside, get some walk around your neighborhood. Your neighborhood is, you know, or go walk around the park, whatever it is. But yeah, get outside. You know, so many things you can do to help you feel better about yourself. You know.
You know, in the Mental Health Talk magazine, Dr. Philip
Yes.
Agrios talks about vitamin
Yeah.
D and how it boosts mood. So you guys can read that article. So absolutely self-care around um, uh, reducing symptoms, improving overall mood. There's a lot of things. And, you know, switch up with self-care because self-care can be boring. Sometimes you can do
Mm.
the same boring thing over and over and over and over. And it becomes boring and taxing and you don't want to do it anymore. So think about things that you enjoy, right? Think about something that you can do for self-care that's enjoyable, and whatever that is, what may be enjoyable for you, Wayne, might be not be enjoyable for somebody else, right? Even if you can Google self-care strategies, a lot of stuff will pop up that you may think, wow, I might want to try that. Even going out alone. Okay, so I engage in a lot of self-care, and sometimes it's alone by myself, and that gives me a peace of mind. It allows me to self-reflect on my week and month or days that I've gone through things, and allow me to kind of resonate on what I'm feeling and reflect on feeling so that I can kind of reset for the next day or the next week, etc., right? Especially with so much going on. So thinking about ways to reset and ground yourself. So let me give you guys this number. So SAMHSA has a national helpline. It's free, confidential, 24/7, 365 days a week. The phone number is 800-662-4357. Can you type that in the box for me, Wayne, please? It's
okay.
In the comment. It's 800-662-4357. National Helpline, 800-662-4357. Yeah. Think about resources that you guys can get engaged in, support groups for men. Thank you. Support groups for men are always great. It promotes socialization, social skills. It helps you practice how to communicate what you're feeling. It models to each other in a setting as to how to communicate what you're feeling. There's so many ways that men can normalize their experiences with mental health and validate each other, right? Men like to be validated too, and that's not a weak. Just like we like to be validated, you all like to be validated too. And you guys watch how other men are dealing with stuff, and that validates you before you speak up too. And this guy, John Fetterman, by him coming forward, I guarantee you others are going to come forward too. It only takes one man to come forward.
I love what you said about changing it up. I think that's a great thing. I have a friend of mine. He dealt with, I think, major depression for years, and for whatever reason, he got into hiking, and then hiking turned into him camping, and he goes to some amazing places. He takes pictures from all over the country in these mountains, and then he was going by himself. Then he found a spouse. And he was taking his partner with him. Then he actually got his mom into it. And him and his mom rebuilt their relationship, and now they do it. And so it's just, again, we never know what we, just branch outside of what we normally would do, like you said, and try something new. Like, oh man, something that you always possibly wanted to try. Go try it. See what it's like. See, maybe you'll become a new thing for you, or whatever. So I definitely believe that you can, to your point about validation. That's what I was saying. I think that, again, we go to, you go take yourself for a pedicure or manicure, you know what I'm saying? Just relax and go get a massage, a facial, whatever it is, maybe you want to get your hair washed or whatever, like go get it done, like it feels amazing.
Yeah.
Like it's some great things out there to do, Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So guys, we are winding down, and again, if anybody wants to come on stage, you can. We have about 10 minutes left. We said we were going to do this for 30 minutes, but let me tell you, we can't get off here in 30 minutes. It lasts an hour. We Dr. Lowell Whiteman on here earlier, 360 Mindset, NFL performance coach. He was on here this week and last week. It dropped some nuggets around the sports arena, because sports folks struggle too. We know that.
Oh my gosh.
Not only the athletes, so does the coaches, right? Absolutely. So, we're on here every Monday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Rogers with Wayne Lassane talking about men's mental health, and it's just been so enlightening and such a breath of fresh air to talk about. For you guys that follow me, you guys know that my background is with the military and working with trauma and groups, and I just get so much joy out of working with men because it makes me feel so good to see the recovery process and to see them come forward and say, this is my story, and you know, I struggle too, and feel good about doing so without being afraid of being shot down, right? Let me tell you, if a man, and I'm talking to the women, you know, on here, if a man discloses mental illnesses to you, please just listen. Listen. The first thing you do is shut them down, or you know, because once a man shut down, that's it. You know, it's hard. What do you think about that statement? Once
and
I
that's what I was
find that
speaking to
once you
earlier. Like
shoot a
once
guy
you
down,
react
it
certain
takes a
ways
hell
to
of a
him
lot to get
when
them
he's
to
telling
come.
you something, that's probably he's not gonna come back to you again. Yeah, that's probably done at that point. You know, it would be really hard for him to come back, and it would take. He would have to come. You would probably have to come to him and acknowledge what was done. You know, and you know, and for him to be able to have that come back and have that conversation with you after that. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Joe, for
Oh, he was
being
just giving
here.
the number.
You said something up top.
Yeah,
Let me see what
and
you said up
and
top. You
also
said
what I'm recognizing in today's society as well,
oh,
because men don't
okay.
feel safe having these conversations with just a lot of people. I see that there's a huge need now for community for men. Like men are seeking spaces to have community because they can't talk to their peers. You know, they can't talk to family or whatever, and so they're asking for these spaces that they can come to and talk to other men who are possibly either dealing with the same things they're dealing with or have dealt with the things that they're dealing with. You know, and I'm coming across that a lot more. This is community has come up a lot in the past 2 weeks, I think. Now, a couple men I've talked to and met, they're just looking for a community around many different things. Just again, in safe spaces to come and speak because they don't have that around themselves.
Please, guys, if you haven't already, please follow both Wayne and I. This is a great conversation. Again, we're on here every Monday. Please check out the magazine. If you go to my website, mentalhealthtalk.live, you'll see the magazine on here. Wayne is a regular writer of the Men Suffer Too magazine. He is a spokesperson. We are always looking for spokespeople for Men Suffer Too.